At 2:15 in the morning, high above the Strait of Hormuz, an RQ-4 Global Hawk surveillance drone flew a steady, pre-programmed track. Below the aircraft, the black water of the Persian Gulf was invisible under a thick layer of haze, providing a perfect environment for the drone to operate in near total silence as a ghost in the sky. The mission controllers sat in a darkened room at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, monitoring every byte of data streaming from the drone while the low hum of cooling fans broke the silence. A sensor operator spoke first. "Major, I have a ghost on the primary feed." The mission commander leaned over the console. "Clarify ghost. Is it a reflection from the surface?" "Negative. It is a precision tracking signal coming from a point 3 miles off our port wing." The commander looked at the primary display showing empty air. Yet the RQ-4 was being illuminated by a high-powered X-band radar. The signal was perfectly calibrated, the kind of lock a surface-to-air missile system uses seconds before a launch. "Identify the source," the commander said. The operator typed quickly as a series of red boxes appeared. "Sir, the system cannot classify it. The frequency is shifting every half-second." Inside the Air Defense Center at Bandar Abbas, an Iranian officer stared at a glowing green radar sweep. "Why is the American drone broadcasting our own encrypted military frequencies back at us? It is not the drone. The signal is originating from the water, but our coastal cameras show nothing on the surface. No ships, no platforms." The Iranian officer picked up a secure phone. He had orders to protect the airspace. If the Americans were testing a new electronic weapon, he had to respond. In Qatar, the commander ordered, "Change heading. Bring the drone to 270. The drone banked slowly to the west, but the unknown source moved with it, maintaining a perfect distance. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. Over the Persian Gulf at 2:22 in the morning, the RQ-4 Global Hawk at 60,000 feet adjusted its flight path once again. The unknown signal began to pulse every 5 seconds as a massive burst of electromagnetic energy hit the drone sensors like a rhythmic heartbeat. Inside the Al Udeid Control Center, Major Harrison stared at the telemetry data as the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to alarm. The primary satellite link was fluctuating, and the drone flight surface status icons on the screen turned from green to yellow. The operator leaned forward, reporting that the aircraft was fighting the autopilot and receiving conflicting commands from the uplink. The operator explained that the signal was injecting data packets directly into the flight computer to take control of the navigation system. Harrison gripped the edge of his desk and ordered a switch to the backup high-frequency radio link for manual override. At the Bandar Abbas Air Defense Center, Major Mahmoud watched a second contact appear exactly 300 meters behind the American drone. The contact had no transponder or infrared signature, looking like a solid wall of steel on the radar screen. Command ordered a scramble of 2 F-4 Phantoms to intercept and identify, with orders not to fire unless fired upon. In the Bandar Abbas hangar, alarms wailed as 2 veteran pilots ran toward their F-4 Phantom jets for a night intercept. The twin engines of the first Phantom roared to life with blue afterburner flames as the jets screamed down the runway. In Qatar, Harrison saw 2 fast-moving Iranian targets rising from the coast and heading straight for the Global Hawk. Harrison announced the scramble while the operator urgently directed his attention to the drone's camera feed. The drone's infrared camera showed a distortion in the air, warping starlight around an edgeless shape like heat haze. The drone shook violently and began a steep, uncommanded dive as the operator reported the loss of the primary engine. As the Global Hawk fell, the Iranian jets closed in, while the mysterious Phantom signal pulsed at a faster rate. Descending through 35,000 feet, the Iranian pilots saw the drone falling with the distortion following it and reached for weapon switches. The situation spiraled toward a kinetic engagement between 2 nations over a target that neither side understood. At 2:30 in the morning at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, the command center was no longer quiet, replaced by urgent tones as General Vance entered and walked to the main tactical map. "Status of the RQ-4, Vance asked. Major Harrison pointed to the screen, stating, "The drone is at 28,000 feet in a controlled but uncommanded descent with lost engine power." Harrison reported 2 Iranian F-4 Phantoms at 20,000 feet, climbing hard and searching for a target with active fire control radars. On the tactical display, the white icon representing the ghost contact suddenly blinked from one set of coordinates to another, clocking at Mach 7. Vance stared at the screen. Mach 7 was over 5,000 miles per hour, yet acoustic sensors recorded no sonic boom, only a solid radar cross-section, but nothing on infrared. Vance ordered the communications officer to get the carrier on the line for a flight of F-35 Lightnings to get eyes on the drone and prevent Iranian salvage. Across the water, the lead Iranian pilot, Colonel Reza, scanned the darkness from his F-4 Phantom cockpit, which was bathed in the red glow of his instruments. Reza reported visual contact with the descending drone, but while his radar showed a massive target behind it, his eyes saw only the empty black horizon. Suddenly, the F-4's electronic warfare suite began to scream with multiple missile locks coming from every direction at once, painting the aircraft. "My screens are white with noise," the wingman shouted as he broke left, losing flight control while the stick vibrated violently from the data flood. In Qatar, the American screens did the same as every radar in the region began to show hundreds of false targets, saturating the entire spectrum. The ghost signal was no longer one point. It was everywhere, and it was getting closer. 2:36 in the morning. Two F-35 Lightning fighters accelerated off the flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, their engines a physical force as they disappeared into the humid night air. Inside the cockpit of the lead fighter, Commander Marcus used his helmet-mounted display to scan the battlespace, but instead of clarity, he saw a digital nightmare. "Control, Guardian 1. My primary tactical display is saturated. I have 600+ contacts across all bands." The controller responded that they were seeing the same from the carrier. The stealth fighters flew in total MCON, trying to hide in the noise, but as they approached the drone's last known position, the noise followed them. Colonel Reza fought the sluggish controls of his F-4 Phantom as the ghost signal manifested as physical pressure, making the air feel as thick as water. Below them, the haze cleared in a perfect circle to reveal the Persian Gulf churning into a massive, white frothy pillar of water rising from deep below. General Vance watched the infrared satellite feed showing a massive, perfect thermal square blooming on the water directly beneath the falling drone. Major Harrison explained the mechanical drag as a magnetic pull, with the F-35S losing airspeed despite being at full military power. Colonel Reza, believing the Americans were using a secret weapon, flipped the safety cover off his missile trigger as the aircraft converged on the drone. The RQ-4 Global Hawk suddenly halted its descent and hung at 10,000 feet, perfectly still in midair despite having no engine power. Commander Marcus watched his airspeed indicator drop to 0, feeling a gentle vibration as his F-35 was suspended in the dark. A flash of violet light erupted from the water and swallowed all 5 aircraft in a single, silent pulse. At 2:45 in the morning in the Persian Gulf, inside the command center at Al Udeid, every monitor went black as the live telemetry from the Global Hawk and the F-35S vanished. A low, persistent hum vibrated through the floorboards as redundant power systems struggled to stay online, while General Vance watched his team fight to reboot the servers. Major Harrison reported losing contact with the entire carrier strike group, noting every radio frequency in the sector was blocked by white noise. Harrison explained that the pulse originated from the water and hit everything within 50 nautical miles, suggesting it was a weapon never seen before. At the Iranian Air Defense Center at Bandar Abbas, Major Mahmoud stood in a room illuminated only by red emergency lights as the primary radar sweep stopped. Technicians frantically checked fiber optic cables as Mahmoud shouted for contact with Colonel Reza's Phantoms, receiving only silence as the whole province was blinded. Mahmoud declared a state of maximum alert over a secure line, ordering coastal batteries to fire if any American vessel entered Iranian waters. At 2:49 in the morning, high above the water, the violet light faded as quickly as it had appeared. Inside the F-35 cockpit, Commander Marcus blinked as his vision returned to a dark, dead glass cockpit, reducing the fighter to a glider. The screens flickered and began to reboot with impossible data as Marcus radioed Guardian 2 to confirm contact. Marcus saw the silhouette of the 2 F-4 Phantoms flying level in the moonlight, with the RQ-4 Global Hawk sitting perfectly still between them. The drone hovered like a ghost with a dead engine while a mile away, Colonel Reza saw a red weapon lockbox on his display. the wingman shouted as the white pillar of water below froze into a solid, glass-like spire reaching from the sea all the way up to the drone. The bridge of water defied gravity as the Americans and Iranians closed to within 500 meters, both sides ready to fire, unaware the real crisis was beginning. 2:50 in the morning at the Strait of HORMUZ, the air between the 5 aircraft was electric, with the rush of wind and missile-lock tones. Inside his F-35, Commander Marcus felt the sweat soak his flight suit as his primary display became a mass of red. He had a solid lock on the lead Iranian Phantom, while the Iranian pilot had a lock on him. The commander spoke into the radio in a harsh whisper. "Guardian 2, I have the lead. You take the wingman. If they move, if they even twitch, you fire." "Copy," Guardian 2 replied. "I am hot. Doors are open." It would take less than 2 seconds for the missiles to find their targets at this range with no room to maneuver. At 2:50 and 10 seconds in the morning, Colonel Reza in the Iranian F-4 felt the vibration of the American radar on his skin. Reza pushed his thumb against the missile release button but did not press it yet, telling his wingman, "Do not blink." "Colonel," the wingman gasped. "My radar." The signal just split. The single ghost contact behind the Global Hawk suddenly divided into 3. One ghost contact moved behind the American lead, one moved behind the Iranian lead, and the third stayed with the drone. At 2 hours 50 minutes and 30 seconds, A.M., Marcus shouted, "Guardian 1, we have a tail. Something just jumped behind us at 0 range." Marcus slammed the throttle forward to full afterburner, but the F-35 did not move and stayed frozen in space. The ghost contact stayed with him as a physical weight, while the airframe groaned under a pressure that should not have existed. Inside the Al Udeid Command Center, General Vance watched the icons overlap and ordered the radioless pilots to break off now. At 2 hours 50 minutes and 50 seconds a.m., the violet light from the water spire began to climb as a steady, blinding glow. The light moved up the glass bridge and touched the belly of the drone, spreading like liquid fire across the wings. The energy jumped to the F-35s and reached out to the Iranian Phantoms, connecting all 5 aircraft in a web. In the cockpits, the pilots saw their instruments spin, while the clocks ran backward and altimeters climbed to 90,000 feet. The missile lock tone changed from a scream to a perfect musical chord that filled the cockpits and command centers. The violet glow reached peak brightness, turning night into high noon while the water below began to hum like 1,000 engines. At 2:51 in the morning, the violet light vanished instantly, leaving absolute silence and a dark cockpit with glowing instruments. Inside the F-35, Commander Marcus shook his head and checked his heads-up display, finding his aircraft flying perfectly level at 10,000 feet. Marcus looked to his left and saw an Iranian F-4 Phantom flying less than 50 meters away in a tight parade formation. Behind them, Guardian 2 and the second Iranian Phantom were similarly paired, repositioned by an unknown force. Marcus rasped a status check to Guardian 2, who reported being moved 5 miles north in less than a second. The RQ-4 Global Hawk's white skin was replaced by a translucent, metallic material shimmering like oil on water as it changed shape. The drone's wings retracted and its intake closed, transforming the aircraft into a smooth, seamless teardrop shape. In Qatar and Bandar Abbas, ghost targets vanished from clean radar maps, leaving only 5 icons moving in perfect unison. General Vance demanded why no one was firing, but Major Harrison reported the fire control systems were inhibited by software returning conflict resolved. In Bandar Abbas, Major Mahmoud learned that missiles would not launch, and the pilots had no control over their aircraft's heading. The teardrop aircraft glowed with amber light as an emotionless voice spoke inside the pilots' helmets, declaring the frequency closed. Colonel Reza challenged the voice over Iranian airspace, but it dismissed sovereignty as a local variable and told them to observe the water. The pilots looked down to see the Persian Gulf had become a mirror, reflecting a non-human city of light and geometry instead of their jets. The teardrop aircraft accelerated silently toward the stars, becoming a pinprick of light before vanishing within seconds. As the vibration stopped and controls went slack, the 4 jets drifted in silence before the radios erupted with panicked voices. Over the Persian Gulf at 2:55 in the morning, The silence in the cockpits was broken by heavy breathing as the amber light vanished. The amber light was gone, but the impression of the city and the water remained burned into the pilot's retinas. As the teardrop disappeared into the upper atmosphere, the physical weight that had been holding the aircraft vanished. Commander Marcus felt the stick come alive in his hand as the F-35 felt dangerously light, asking his wingman for a status check. "I have the jet. Lead," his wingman replied with a shaking voice, reporting that his sensors and tactical map were rebooting. Marcus looked out his canopy to see the Iranian F-4 banking away hard toward the coast, its engines dumping fuel into afterburners. Colonel Reza, focused only on survival, faced a cockpit filled with failing warning lights and a lingering pressure behind his eyes. "Bandar Abbas. This is Reza," he shouted, reporting the drone's transformation and ordering a ceasefire as they returned to base. In the Al Udeid command center, General Vance watched the radar return as conflict resolved vanished, showing the jets but not the drone. Major Harrison reported that the drone's last telemetry showed an impossible acceleration of 50 Gs before the link died. Vance leaned over the console, staring at the empty radar spot and questioning the status of the water spire. Harrison confirmed the water was back to normal, but the Abraham Lincoln reported a massive magnetic anomaly across the strike group. Every compass on every ship was pointing toward the coordinates where the drone had transformed. Marcus watched the Iranian Phantoms disappear into the coastal haze, feeling an overwhelming sense of insignificance rather than a desire for combat. Marcus radioed control, reporting the lost target and requesting a vector to the tanker as they were low on fuel. The controller vectored him to a KC-135, advising of multiple reports of unknown lights over the entire Gulf. Marcus looked up at the bright, cold stars, feeling that the sky was no longer a place he understood. As the tactical threat ended, both nations entered a race to explain the unexplainable strategic mystery. Over the Persian Gulf at 3:15 in the morning, the KC-135 tanker moved through the night like a slow, glowing whale as two F-35 fighters approached the refueling boom. Commander Marcus watched the boom move toward his receptacle while his radar picked up hundreds of stationary contacts at 80,000 feet in a perfect grid pattern. Inside Al Udeid, General Vance watched the grid expand over the Middle East, a global monitoring system activated in a single heartbeat. Harrison reported the NRO sees grid points over Norfolk, Groton, Cheyenne Mountain, the Kremlin, and Hainan Island, each with a ghost contact directly above. Harrison revealed the conflict-resolved voice was a direct neural interface. Cockpit recorders picked up no audio, yet all pilots heard the same words. In a Tehran bunker, senior commanders stared at a wall of monitors as their own air defense network showed the same grid pattern. The Iranian Supreme Command issued a stand-down order, safing coastal batteries and grounding all aircraft. As the F-35S finished refueling and turned back toward the carrier, the grid points above glowed like new amber stars, constant and watching. The strategic assessment was grim as the world moved into a new era of forced peace, with advanced weapons rendered obsolete. The sun rose over the Potomac River, looking exactly as before, but the sky was now occupied by a landlord who had finally come home. 3 days later at the Pentagon, General Vance and the Secretary of Defense sat in a shielded room behind a satellite image of the now calm Strait of HORMUZ. The Secretary broke the silence, noting both sides were lying to the public about the Global Hawk's loss and demanding the truth from Vance. Vance explained that air superiority was lost because the environment became reactive, with invisible grid points at 80,000 feet that put weapons to sleep. Vance slid a folder containing the psychological debriefs of the grounded pilots who couldn't reconcile the mathematical impossibility of the city in the water. Vance reported that the Iranians had pulled their fleet back to port, leading to unprecedented back-channel communication between the State Department and Tehran. The world entered a new era of forced peace, where advanced weapons were rendered obsolete by a single conflict-resolved message. Vance contemplated whether humanity was being protected or policed, noting they had simply become occupants whose landlord had finally come home. As the sun rose over the Potomac River, the world looked the same, but every pilot knew the sky was no longer empty and the rules had changed.